Centralia feels like a place that the world forgot on purpose. Even maps seem to avoid acknowledging its full presence anymore. People who pass nearby often feel an unexplained pressure in their chest. The town once looked ordinary from a distance, surrounded by quiet Pennsylvania hills. Nothing about it suggested it would become something impossible to erase. Yet something beneath it had always been waiting. Residents once lived simple lives above a vast underground coal network. They never thought about what lay beneath their foundations and streets. The earth below them was older than anything they built above it. In 1962, everything changed with what was supposed to be a controlled landfill burn. Officials believed the fire would safely dispose of waste before winter. No one questioned how close it was to abandoned mine shafts. A small spark escaped the controlled area without being noticed at first. It slipped through cracked ground and entered forgotten underground tunnels. That single moment changed the fate of the entire town forever. The fire found endless coal seams waiting like fuel-lined veins. It spread silently through darkness where no human eyes could follow. Beneath Centralia, something began to consume everything without sound. At first, smoke appeared in strange places across town streets. People saw thin grey lines rising from cracks in sidewalks. They thought it was temporary and harmless at first. Soon, roads began to weaken as heat distorted the ground beneath them. Asphalt shifted like soft clay under pressure from below. The town slowly started breaking apart in ways no one understood. Homes began to tilt slightly as foundations lost stability over time. Doors stopped closing properly as structures shifted unevenly. Families felt their world subtly changing under their feet. By the time warnings started, the fire had already grown uncontrollable. Attempts to stop it only pushed it deeper into coal layers. Every solution seemed to make the problem spread further underground. Authorities realized too late that they were dealing with something far larger. The fire was not staying in one place anymore. It was moving like a living system through the earth. Evacuation plans were announced, but many residents ignored early warnings. They believed the danger was exaggerated or temporary at best. Life continued above a growing underground catastrophe. The cemetery near the landfill became one of the first affected zones. Smoke began appearing between grave markers without visible source. The dead seemed surrounded by something waking beneath them. Ground around graves started sinking in small but noticeable shifts. Headstones leaned as if the soil beneath was softening. The cemetery felt like it was slowly being swallowed. By then, officials realized evacuation would not be optional anymore. The town was becoming structurally unstable from within. Centralia was no longer safe for human habitation, but even as plans formed, the fire kept expanding deeper underground. It spread through coal seams like veins of endless fuel. The town above it could only wait for collapse. Evacuation orders finally came with urgency and growing fear. Loudspeakers echoed through streets announcing immediate departure. Some residents still hesitated, unable to accept leaving everything behind. Families rushed to pack belongings as panic spread quickly. Strange delays began occurring, as if time itself resisted movement. Cars refused to start at moments that mattered most. Smoke vents opened across yards like wounds in the earth. Heat rose through floors, making homes feel dangerously unstable. Survival suddenly became a race against the ground itself. Highways began to fracture as escaping residents fled in fear. Roads buckled under invisible pressure rising from below. The path out of Centralia was already becoming unsafe. Emergency crews struggled to maintain order during the evacuation chaos. Communication systems failed repeatedly without clear reason. Radios carried strange static that sounded almost like voices. Some residents refused to leave despite clear warnings of danger. They insisted the town still felt alive in some way. They believed leaving would mean abandoning something important beneath them. Sinkholes appeared without warning, swallowing parts of streets and gardens. The ground behaved unpredictably, like something shifting underneath. Centralia was falling inward piece by piece. The evacuation zone expanded as conditions worsened rapidly each day. Authorities realized containment was no longer possible. The town was effectively being erased from the surface world. In the cemetery, smoke continued rising even after evacuation began. It drifted between graves like something searching for escape. The fire had already reached sacred ground beneath the soil. Something about the underground fire felt different from ordinary burning. It did not behave like a natural disaster anymore. It felt deliberate in its persistence and movement. Residents who stayed behind described hearing faint whispers underground. The sounds were inconsistent but always seemed to respond. It felt like the ground itself was listening. By the time most people left, Centralia had already changed permanently. Streets cracked open like broken bones under pressure. The town was no longer stable or predictable. Only a few stubborn individuals remained within the evacuation zone. They refused to abandon homes they believed were still safe. They chose silence over uncertain relocation. Those who stayed began noticing strange patterns in the ground movement. It was not random but seemed almost intentional. The town felt like it was reacting to them. At night, faint glowing cracks appeared in isolated areas. The light pulsed softly, like breathing beneath stone. Darkness above was no longer complete or peaceful. Some residents claimed they heard voices calling their names. The sound came from beneath floors and walls simultaneously. It made reality feel unstable and uncertain. Objects inside homes began shifting without human interference. Chairs moved slightly, and doors opened on their own. Something unseen was becoming more active within the town. Dreams became shared experiences among remaining residents strangely often. They described collapsing tunnels and glowing underground spaces. The imagery felt consistent across unrelated individuals. Fear began replacing stubborn hope among those still living there. Isolation made every sound feel amplified and meaningful. Centralia was becoming something no longer fully human. Then, people began disappearing without explanation or trace. No struggle or warning was ever found afterward. Only empty spaces remained where they once lived. Search efforts were limited due to unsafe conditions everywhere. Officials blamed sinkholes, but offered no clear answers. The truth remained buried beneath burning ground. Eventually, even communication with remaining residents became impossible. Silence spread across abandoned sections of the town. Centralia was nearly empty but not truly lifeless. Journalists later arrived seeking answers about the strange disappearance. The town's reputation had already become myth-like. Few believed what was said about it. One investigator entered the zone determined to document everything. He crossed warning lines into unstable territory alone. The air changed immediately as he stepped inside. The further he went, the more reality felt distorted. Roads no longer matched recorded maps or memory. The town was rearranging itself around his presence. His compass spun without settling in any direction. Electronic devices began failing one after another. Something beneath the ground was interfering with everything. He heard faint whispers through broken radio static continuously. The voices seemed aware of his movement. It felt like the town was responding directly to him. Walls showed markings not present in earlier photographs. Messages appeared freshly written in abandoned places. One warning repeated in several locations without explanation. The ground became warmer with each step deeper inside. Cracks began glowing faintly beneath his feet. Heat suggested something alive beneath the surface. Suddenly, escape routes stopped making logical sense entirely. Roads looped back in impossible directions. Centralia felt like a sealed environment now. Nightfall brought complete disorientation as visibility collapsed quickly. Smoke and heat distorted every remaining landmark. The town seemed to close in around him. At that point, he realized something fundamental had changed. Centralia was no longer just a burning town. It was something aware and reactive. Every movement deeper felt like being guided unwillingly forward. The ground no longer allowed retreat or reversal. He was being taken towards something central. The underground fire began behaving like a coordinated system. It responded to his presence in subtle patterns. The town was no longer passive destruction. The earth beneath finally opened into a massive glowing cavern. Heat surged upward like breath from a living throat. He had reached something beneath everything. Inside, the fire no longer looked like simple combustion. It formed shifting structures resembling tunnels and veins. It felt organized rather than chaotic. Every recording device began capturing distorted, unreadable data. Audio shifted into breathing patterns and rhythmic tones. Reality itself felt rewritten. The voice of Centralia became clear and unified at last. It spoke not from one direction, but everywhere at once. It acknowledged his presence directly. The fire showed patterns resembling streets and buildings in motion. It looked like a memory preserved in burning form. The town still existed beneath destruction. Understanding struck too late that the fire was not ending anything. It was transforming everything into another state. Centralia had become something new. The ground rose slightly, as if inhaling slowly and deliberately. Heat wrapped around everything like conscious pressure. Escape was no longer physically possible. In the final realization, he understood the truth completely. Centralia was not dying or disappearing at all. It was awake, expanding, and waiting beneath the world.